But we were talking about like being anxious in the studio. Like when I moved to LA, I kind of realized that I was so used to the super slow way of making tracks. Like, Prodigy, we'd spend 5 days on a kick drum and a bass line if we needed to.
Wow.
Not even joking, and then throw it out. But then you're suddenly in an LA writing session. It's like you have 3 hours with this person.
Yep.
And I kind of noticed I'd get an initial idea down, then be kind of paralyzed. Like I'd have a really hard time moving it forward. So I was just like, I need to rejig creativity.
You need to
so
yes and.
Exactly. But how, like, it's one thing to say it, but how to actually tangibly do it in the studio. So I kind of wound up building this regimen for myself, and, every day, first thing in the morning, I just spend 55 minutes and make a beat. It sounds really simple. But basically, once I started stringing a number of those together, I became pretty much euphoric constantly. And when you know that you can just sit down and create, sometimes in a very small period of time, like your whole concept of reality kind of shifts. Your whole feeling for like, what did I do with my day totally shifts as well. You're like, I made something cool. Or it doesn't even matter if it's cool or not. Just knowing like I'm like this wellspring of manifestation from the infinite source of intelligence and energy into tangible artifacts in the physical world. You know what I mean? It gets pretty wild. But we're just talking, fundamentally, like you get this new source of happiness and, how we make the world a better place. And so if everyone's like improving and learning, and happiness is found in making progress towards a goal, not necessarily in the achieving the goal itself,
Yeah. You're like a philosopher.
You got to get philosophical, man. You're in one room your whole life, more or less. You got to have a rich inner world.
Wait. So I guess finish wrapping your pitch on the Beats Accelerator program.
Okay, so I mean that's it basically. Like you can go to beatsaccelerator.com and sign up, and doors open like maybe 4 times a year, so you can get your name on the wait list. And actually, if you don't mind me saying, like I'm just actually putting together a wait list for a new program called Mix Accelerator Process. I'm
assuming it's a similar mindset kind of thing.
Kind of thing, yeah. The fundamental goal is just to demystify the mixing process so that technology only ever acts in service of your vision, your sonic vision.
Yeah.
Mixing is like a vast and nuanced field. And I think that there's so much information out there about it. And again, through spending like literally hundreds of hours on Twitch, talking to people, and doing track feedback, I just noticed people are getting hung up over and over and over again on like mixing. So, and interestingly enough, both like, about 50 to 70% of my income comes from mixing. So I'm really good at it. So yes, I'll teach you all the stuff about how I mix, but then it's also like really want you to understand like the physics of sound, arrangement, dynamics, what stuff mixing can't finish. Because what's most fun to me now as a producer is knowing what I need to sort out before I mix. And I have a visceral understanding of that because of mixing. Anyway, that's just like one little side quest. But, there's going to be like the full-on like vocal processing masterclass. There's going to be like how the physics of sound works. But the fundamental journey that you go on, again, like demystifying the mixing process so that the technology will never stand in the way of realizing your ideas.
Yeah.
And, Beats Accelerator Process is like break free of the loop and finish better music faster for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And this is all. Actually, Ben, you've got a world exclusive here. I'm working on. I have a whole huge map. Basically, these are all filling in gaps. So, like, there's a complete producer network, and basically, what I'm trying to do is create like the complete producer process. I've worked, whether it's being like a dedicated engineer, dedicated programmer, dedicated this and that. I've worked in so many niches within our industry. That I think one of my greatest skills is an ability to kind of tie it all together into one whole. So I basically want to create like this master jumbo resource that you can just keep diving into over and over as you grow and as you evolve, that has like a holistic structure around it. So you're not just constantly trying to piece together these little isolated silos of information into something practical.
Right. You're not like going on University of YouTube and getting lost down a million rabbit holes. It's like, it's there. Yeah. You don't have to waste time. That was one of the great things also that I noticed about the Complete Producer Network is like, it does have like a feel almost like a Facebook group, but without any of the distractions and without any of the algorithms trying to pull you in any sort of direction. It's like, I'm focused, I'm here, let me learn or let me chat or, Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, it's interesting because like, when the social media networks have been engineered to manipulate your attention and keep you on there as long
I
as
know,
possible.
right?
You know, it's like,
Just F's with our brains.
It's so complete producer network is not sticky like that. And then it's like, well, how do we get user retention? It's just like put some more cool stuff up on there. But just to clarify, like we are living in a golden age, and the fact that you can just jump on YouTube and like get inspired is awesome. But so I really enjoy like YouTube and stuff now for like inspiration. But I got really frustrated trying to use YouTube to solve specific problems.
It's not fast enough. It's too...
Yeah, or you don't quite, or you almost get the information you need. Or, you know, like there's like a whole 4-year process where I was actively testing every single DAW, every single like beat programming thing in the world, trying to create a system that could do everything from like blank screen writing session through to a final mix. And that whole process of trying to make this system basically is what gave birth to the Beats Accelerator process. And the spoiler alert is that I wound up finding out that there was no one DAW to rule them all. And in that journey, I learned so much more about how our brains work and how our psychologies work, that I realized that the biggest mistake I was making was that as soon as I had an idea, I would start mixing it. Or as soon as like that creative energy started slowing down and I was like, oh, what's next? I'd be like, well, maybe this kick drum would sound a little bit better if I just like, there's a little honky frequency in there. And then you shift out of this, like, what are the raw ideas that are bringing this together, and start kind of trying to polish this half-baked thing. And it was really interesting when I give track feedback on Twitch, so many people come on and they're like, hey, I just started writing this a couple of hours ago. Can you tell me how the mix is sounding? And it's like, your music's not done yet. Like, you know, and I came up at the point when I was first working with Guy, we would still have to print stuff. The first few tracks we did, we'd still have to print it from Pro Tools onto tape. So there's really clear like understanding of like, okay, the track is done, now we're gonna mix. But what I wound up finding was that, you know, our brains respond to all these different signals. So if I'm sitting down in front of the thing that I'm constantly using to finish records, which is Pro Tools, which I love Pro Tools, advocate since day one, then it's no surprise at any time there's like a little lull in my creative process. My brain's immediately like, well, I can hear, you know, you start going into mixer mode, you start going into finessing, polishing mode instead of fundamental creativity mode. So I basically use either Live or Pro Tools, and I basically use Live to be creative and have fun. And I don't have all of my mixing tools in Live. I have a fundamentally different set of tools in there. And basically I do, beyond like faders and a high and a low shelf, basically like no mixing in Live at all, not even like an aux send or whatever. So when I'm in Live, my brain is being fed the signals like anything is possible. You know what I mean? We can take any idea we want and do something cool with it. Like, what are you thinking? Do we need to add something here? Do we need to take something off? Maybe we should change the feeling of this section, you know? So, and that's enormously productive because you just know the type of problem that you're trying to solve in that situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I can actually look forward to
You're not
mixing.
being distracted by mixing. You're just
Correct,
creating, and then when you're ready and when it's done, like you said, like it's not done yet. Like when the music is like, okay, I have a bop. Now let's make it sound like a bop, you know?
Yeah. And then this is where it gets really cool, because then once you load it into Pro Tools, your brain gets fed this whole new set of messages. Like subliminally, you're in this whole new environment. So it's like you hear it fresh. Everything's rendered as audio. So you're not associating any sound with all the little things you've been kind of tweaking on before. You're not seeing the MIDI roll. So it's actually an amazing way to bring a fresh brain to something you may have been working on
you're
for weeks
free
or
of the
months
production at that point, right? Like you don't have
because
when you print it, when you bounce in place from, you know, MIDI to audio, it's like, great, now I'm just using this audio and I'm going to make it sound as good as I can make it sound. It's not like, oh, is the chord in the exact right spot? Is it the right, you know, fingering, whatever it is, you know, like just like let go of that now.
Yeah. Totally.
Let's let it blend in with everything else the best possible way.
Absolutely, yeah. And then it's just like you maximize what you've done. You know, have you heard that whole thing about like, you know, production should be maximizing the results of songwriting, mixing should be maximizing the results of production, and then mastering should be maximizing.
I think I've heard that. I've also heard, you know, write a song like there's no production, do the production like there's no mix, do a mix like there's no master, which is, I guess, a similar concept. Not quite exactly the same.
Totally. Yeah. It's great. And that's actually really fun, you know, because also like, you know, in Beats Accelerator process, like I've got stuff all set up so that this is going to sound a little bit like infomercially, but it's like your sounds practically fall into place. Your mix practically falls into place. Like I did quite a lot of system building so that things wind up kind of landing roughly in the right place. And so if I'm doing stuff on Twitch, like I'll just set a timer on Twitch. I'm doing a whole series of them at the moment, 2 tracks in 2 hours, just any old idea. And, sometimes people come on and be like, oh my God, this mix is amazing. And there's literally no mix, like haven't even moved a fader. And that's where you get also just really into like having a system that can let you choose and change sounds really, really easily. So if you're like, oh, this kick drum isn't quite working, then, bump 3 buttons and you've tried out 5 different ones and here's the new one in there ready to go. Whereas when I was building stuff by flying around, chopping up audio on Pro Tools, which was great, if it was like, we need to change a kick drum, it was going to be like 2 hours work. You know what I mean? Finding one, getting it all in the right place, duplicating everything, blah, 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 blah. So, it's kind of wild.